We are getting to the time of year when you do need lights if you're going to be riding in the evening. The good news is that with a really good front light, you can actually really enjoy night riding, as we did just a couple of days ago together. We brought to you a group test of 4 front lights. These are all seeing lights and they're all over 1000 lumens. Whilst opinions vary, amongst our team we very much think that 1000 lumens is pretty much the minimum if you want to ride carefree after dark. So we have 4 lights to look at, one from Blackburn, one from Lezyne, one from Exposure and another one from Knog. The criteria we've looked at is the beam itself, the mounting, battery life and also the number of modes that the lights have, as well as obviously the price. So without further ado, on to the first light. The first light on our list is the Blackburn Dayblazer 1500. Now we are going in reverse order, which means this light is the lowest scoring. However, it did have some really good things going for it as well.
Well, shall we start with the positives? What was good about the light?
Well, it is actually the lightest light on test. So the claimed weight is 140 grams. I got 143, so I'll give them that. It's also rated IP67 for both water and grime. So you don't really need to worry about water ingress and damage that way. So again, that is a positive thing.
So it looks like it's quite tall and narrow. Is that because it's meant to sort of take up less space on your handlebar, something like that?
It will, yeah, it absolutely, I mean, that's not something that's stated, but it will take up slightly less room on your handlebar when you're comparing it with something like the Lezyne that we've got here. It does come then with a negative in the fact that a lot of it is quite lean, particularly the mounting strap. And that is the main area where it fell down, really. I actually managed to break this mounting strap during testing, which means, you know, clearly I've got these other loops, but the main reason that this broke is because I had to pull it right over. So you swivel it over like here, pull it over on the handlebar. But this is quite a small space. If you look at that, you haven't got an awful lot of room there. I mean, clearly it's stretchy, but you have to stretch it quite far. And that was just my major problem with it. Now, if you've got quite a skinny handlebar, it might not be an issue, but a lot of road bikes certainly come with quite chunky round handlebars. And if you compare that to the space you've got here on the Lezyne, it's much, much wider. So there's a significant difference there.
The Lezyne tends to really wrap around the top of the bar a bit more.
Exactly. So though there's nothing, I mean, the light itself is very well made, it's very waterproof, I didn't have any problems with dirt, but a light is very often only as good as its mount, and so the mount did really let it down, and that's where we had problems there.
What about the beam itself then?
The beam itself is good. So Blackburn's main focus is this TIR lens, as they say. It's very focused, so you get a really focused light in the centre, and then it's just a bit cooler off to the side, which works well, and I didn't have any complaints there whatsoever. It's 1500 lumens, and it certainly felt on a par with the others that we have on test. I wouldn't say it was substantially better than any of the others, but nor was it substantially worse. So there's no problem there. So the claimed battery life is 2 hours. I actually took this out for a ride over 2 hours, and I turned it off at 2 hours 20, and it was still going. It did have a red light, which did indicate that it was running very low. However, it was still going. So I find that really impressive that Blackburn's stating 2 hours, but I got well over 2 hours.
And how are the other modes as well?
You can go through them. So we start at number 1, number 2, number 3, onto the pulsing, and then the flashing, and then you can start back again. So you don't need to turn it off to get back to the first mode at all, which is useful. And also you do have a battery indication light on the top as well, which really is, I think all of them have a form of battery indication light. This one is sitting on the top. It's very easy to see. It doesn't stay on during the ride, so you can't constantly see how much battery you have left, which I find I would like to know the whole time, but I suppose you could also argue that that must take some battery. Yeah, so there are pros and cons there. It's green when you've got between 75 and 100% of battery. From 25 to 75%, it's orange. And then once you get below 25%, it turns red, and it does stay on the whole time at that point, which is quite helpful because then you know I'm now, I need to get home now, or I need to swap down the modes. As well as the mount problem, there were a couple of other negatives on this light. One is that you have a USB port here, but you've got a round hole, and when you're putting the USB in, unless you use the one that came with it, it doesn't actually fit in the hole particularly well. It does go in and it is on charge, but if you knock it, it comes out very easily. The other thing about this light that frustrates me actually quite a bit is that it says on the box and in the marketing material that it comes with a helmet mount. This is the helmet mount. And that is not sufficient as a helmet mount. This is what it is. It's a helmet mount adapter. So you undo this bolt here, you put this in its place, and then you use a helmet mount that you might get from GoPro or elsewhere, or you can buy them on Amazon in sets, and then you attach it with this. But that isn't therefore a helmet mount in itself.
No, it's kind of half the job.
It is, yes. So it's not a bad score because the body is really good. The light is very good. The battery life really impressed me. So it's not all negatives for Blackburn, but it certainly can't win because of that mount, the problems we have with the charging cable, and also this adapter situation.
Knog was originally known for the funky frog-shaped light that wrapped its rubber legs around your handlebar and winked. Now the Australian brand has got a little bit more serious, but no less innovative. And this is the PWR 1100 Trail, which is a road light, we assume, but trail suggests it could be either. And actually we found that it's pretty good for all types of riding. It has a good even spread, powerful for 1100 lumens, and it's got a lot of innovative features, as I said. Where the innovation is in the design of this. It's a modular light, which means it comes into pieces, into sections. This is the light head, and you can attach this light head to another battery. You can use the battery to power a lantern, or you can even plug in your device, your phone, to charge it up if you're away from mains power. So useful if you're on a bike packing trip, something like that. It doesn't have a switch. You cycle through the modes by twisting it like that. It comes with 6 preset modes, but you can customize it using the Knog Mode Maker app. So if you want fewer modes, you can do that. You can get rid of some, or if you want more, if you want to change the lumen output of your full beam, you can do that as well. You can pretty much do whatever you like with the Mode Maker.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great feature, because with bike lights, generally like more modes is seen as better, because you get the option, it's more choices. That you can have a mode that really sort of suits the kind of riding that you're doing. But then the downside of that is that you have to cycle through all of these modes every time to get to that particular one which you like. And so yeah, with the Knog system, with being able to create your own light settings, you can have a full beam and then a kind of a daylight mode, maybe where it's a steady light with a flash. And
how did you find the mount? Because the two that I've got both have a rubber strap, whereas you have more of a clamp. Did it work well on your bars?
Yeah, I mean, it's meant for, in its basic form, it's for a 31.8 bar, but it comes with a shim for smaller bars as well. You basically clamp it on like that, and it's got this clip here, and it fastens with a thumb wheel that, once it slides on like that, it holds the light really firmly. The other thing is that it's nicely in balance, so there's not so much danger of it nosediving on a rough road. It's a little bit fiddlier to swap between bikes than a rubber band type mount, but on the other hand, it's not going to break like the Blackburn did. The good thing about it is that it's also narrow, so that you can get it. It's not going to get in the way of your computer or anything else on your bar. So it has a quoted 1.7 hours of battery, which is 1 hour 42. When we rode, we found that it almost did that. It was just a few minutes short, but we stopped and faffed around quite a bit. So 1 hour 42 minutes is pretty accurate.
So how does it work with a fuel gauge, kind of like telling you how much battery you have left?
Yeah, it's got these 4 red LEDs on the side here, which go down as the battery goes down in charge. I think it's a shame that they're all red, because for me, a red light means it's on its last legs, and that's the time to start sprinting. But they're all red.
So most of the lights that we have on test, when the battery's getting really low, it will drop down to the next mode. I think we found on our night ride that's not what happens with the Knog.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, when your time's up on full beam, it just plunges you into darkness, which is what happened. But you can switch it back on again, but it'll plunge you into darkness again if you try to use full beam. So you've got to use a lower mode. So yeah, I would deduct a little bit off it for that.
I mean, we were very impressed with the beam itself because it says it's 1100 lumens. Some of the others we have are up to 15, but there wasn't a substantial difference there, was there? So I think sometimes the quoted lumens is sometimes a little bit misleading. It certainly wasn't less impressive, and it illuminated the road just as much as the others.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I think it really kicks out quite a lot of light for 1100 lumens. It's the lowest lumen count on test here. The other good thing about it is that it's a really nice even spread. It's not really so much a beam pattern, but it's lighting up the whole of the road in front of you. And it also gave you that nice sort of peripheral light so that you could orientate yourself a bit better, which is what you always want to do when you're night riding, especially if you're kind of going fast down a descent. You know, you don't want to just see a bright spot in front of you. You really like to see everything. And I thought it was really good for that.
And then price-wise, you've got the Blackburn's obviously $89.99. The Lezyne comes in at £90, and the Knog is 120. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. So it's a little bit more expensive than those, but I think for your money you get this modular setup with it. I don't know how useful that would be to people, but I guess that if you are going bike packing, it'd be nice to be able to use it as a power pack. The build quality is really nice as well, which is something else in its favour. It's quite a sort of interesting and nice little slim sort of cigar shape. Overall, I think it's a really nice light. It works really well. It looks good. And I think I would probably pay the extra 30 quid to get it over the rubber band type that's a bit more basic. We're giving it 4 out of 5, which is a good score.
I have the Lezyne 1300 XXL, and the reason it's a tied second place is because this light really impressed me. It wasn't as good as the next light that we'll look at. However, it is also less than a third of the price. So that is absolutely something that we clearly have to consider. So this Lezyne light comes in at £90 or $95. You've got a nice aluminium body. The claimed weight is 208 grams. It actually came in at 226. I wonder if they've perhaps measured it without the mount. It is quite a hefty thing, but it also feels quite robust. I have dropped it, it was fine, it still works. And also, yes, we have a rubber mount, which, as discussed, you quite liked the clamp in that it's very sturdy. But this, once it's on the bar, it doesn't move, doesn't budge at all. And there's plenty of space in there, and it does still swivel. It is a little bit stiffer to swivel actually than the Blackburn, but again, that means it stays in place, and I don't have any concern over that at all. In terms of the beam as well, Lezyne has really focused on making it wide, which is something they've always talked about. And I find that a really positive thing because I feel then very safe and secure. And again, you could use it off-road quite easily if you wanted to. So, it highlights really just everything above you. And okay, you're not riding in the sky. You don't need to see what's above you, but I feel much safer, with that kind of greater amount of vision. So you've got 3 LEDs there.
So how many modes does it have?
It has 7. There's actually an interesting story with Lezyne's modes in that they have had problems where people have returned them to warranty thinking they don't work because, well, they haven't really read the instructions. In order to get it into what they call race mode, you push and hold it for 5 seconds. And quite often 5 seconds is quite a long time when you're holding something and waiting. But once it's in that mode, then you just switch between the full power and the overdrive mode. The idea being that, if you're out riding at night, it's very unlikely you want any of the other modes. So that is quite useful. And then in standard mode, you get different varying brightnesses, and there's also a flashing mode as well.
So that overdrive, you could really use it as a kind of full beam and a dip beam almost, because I think we find that with cars, some cars flash you. It kind of depends how sensitive the driver's eyes are. Yes. Sometimes you get flashed, but with that you could just dip it,
yes,
and then put it back onto full beam when the car's gone. So that's pretty good.
Charging is just via USB. It's in the back here. I did find that, although I didn't have the same problem that we had with the Blackburn, in that the port not actually fitting very well, you do have to kind of push this rubber cover in quite firmly to make sure it's properly there. But I mean, once it's there, it's fine, and it does keep out water and grit.
Yeah, so how does it perform with the battery life?
So the claim life is 2.5 hours, and I got over 2 hours 20. And I think in terms of testing burn time, there's a lot of variables. Heat certainly comes into it. So I think I can give them, a couple of minutes here or there. And 2.5 hours is longer than the claim time than any of the other lights on test. But the Blackburn actually did give me the same amount of time, which I think is well worth highlighting. But the Lezyne, in terms of claimed hours, does come in the highest.
Yeah, Do you get a lot of warning for when it's running out? Or?
So Lezyne has gone for a green light from 50% to 100%, and then it's amber from 10% to 50%, and then you only get the red from 10%, and then once you get to 5%, you get a flashing red. At this point, it really is get home, Dorothy, because you're going to be plunged into darkness. But yeah, your warning does come quite late, so whether or not that's a problem is going to depend on myriad factors of where you're riding and how much you're really relying on that light to get home. But it's something worth definitely being aware of, that once you've got that red light, you haven't got an awful lot left.
Yeah, yeah.
The only real negative on this one is just the amount of space it takes up on the handlebars. It is quite a bulky unit. Well, I mean, it is probably similar to the Exposure in terms of width, but it is sitting on the bars rather than being up on a different mount. So it's something to bear in mind. I don't find it a problem at all, but if you do want a bit more, if you don't want clutter on your handlebars, it might be something just to consider. So overall, it did very well. We got 4.5 stars out of 5, and it comes in at £90 or $99.99. For the price and for what you're getting, I think it's a really solid option. Now, there is another light that we found that performed incredibly well, but it is also over 3 times the price. So Stefan, tell us, why is your light worth £300?
This light that I have on test is from Exposure, which is a British brand based in the south of England. And yeah, they've built up a good reputation for themselves producing very, very high quality lights. It's over 3 times the price of the Lezyne. But then it does have quite a lot of features to it, which to some extent justify the price, or at least explain why it is quite so high. Firstly, I think that we're pretty much all agreed that it's the brightest light that we have on test. Yeah. Although it's got 1500 lumens, or it claims 1500 lumens, Exposure does make sure to make explicit that this is a measured lumens rather than calculated lumens, which generally gives a higher value than what you will actually get out in use of the light. And so that might explain why it's quite so bright, but yeah, it has a comparable lumen count attached to it.
So what are the what else is good about it? It's the brightest.
It's the brightest, and it has the most modes, or at least I don't know how many modes that you could add to the Knog, but it comes with a great many modes. But what's quite nice about this is that instead of having to scroll through endless modes trying to get back to the beginning, you have 7 programs that you can set it to, and within each of these programs, then you have a finite number of modes, and so it's a lot easier to scroll through. And so I've been using it in program 1 most of the time, and with this you have 3 settings. You have high, medium and low, and high is the brightest setting, and so riding around at 1500 lumens. Medium drops it down a little bit, and low significantly lower again. And
battery life, firstly, what is it, and then also how does it display how much you've got left?
And so on the brightest setting, battery life is claimed at 2 hours, and it's really quite nice. Rather than having light indicators giving you an idea of what percentage it's on the back of the light, it's got a countdown saying exactly, like to the minute, how many minutes, how many hours you have left. And it shows you that for each of the different settings as well. So when you've got it in the high setting, it will start off with 2 hours and counting down, but then you swap into the medium setting, and then you'll see 5.5 hours or whatever. And so it's really good for keeping on top of exactly how much power that you have left with the light. I think that is part of why the price is quite so high, but it's really quite useful, and I found that it's really quite accurate. Testing it to exhaustion, I found that it would go down minute by minute, and then when it came to the end, it did just cut out, and so there's not the warning that you get with some of the other lights, so dropping into a lower setting. But then again, you've got the number right there in front of you, so there's not so much of an excuse for being surprised when the light runs out.
In terms of mounting, it's certainly not a simple rubber strap, is it?
No, I mean it's quite it's quite beautifully engineered here with this like little split lamp set up. There's some slots in just so, and so you can get it around really quite wide bars. But although it's very, very neat and very pretty, it's a bit more fiddly swapping it between bikes. It's not quite as fast, especially compared to a rubber strap. So if you're planning on using this on a number of different bikes, that would be a bit of a pain.
Does it need a clamp like that because it's heavy? I mean, it looks quite big compared to the others. I mean, is it heavy?
Yeah, I mean, it is like fairly hefty. Like you feel it in your hand and it feels like nice and solid, but I've weighed it at 228 grams, and so it's not significantly heavier than the other lights that we have on test. And the Lezyne, it can cope with a similar sort of weight with the rubber strap that it has, and so it definitely feels very, very sturdy. Like you could take this off road, you could take this on some pretty gnarly trails, and be completely assured that it's going to be staying in place on that clamp, which we didn't have any problems with the Lezyne moving about, but with this, it's completely assured, very, very stable, very secure, but just a bit of a pain for swapping between bikes.
So the other 3 lights on test use a micro USB cable, which people have lying around the house all over the place. That's not the case with Exposure, is it?
No, it's not. And so it's if you're running low on charge and you're somewhere else, you can't just quickly borrow somebody's cable to top it up. With this light, it comes with a wall charger, but you can get an adapter which will connect to USB and charge this light up from a USB socket. But it's not the end that plugs into the light isn't micro USB. If
you look at it on paper, you say it's got 1500 lumens, it's got a similar battery life. What is it that makes it worth this much money? But I have had an Exposure light for over a decade and it still works and it's still going strong, and I can't really see any evidence of damage on it. And I know plenty of other people have had similar stories. I think also Exposure offer very good warranty, mainly because they are so confident in the longevity of their products, and we've both found that they really do last. So yes, it is a massive outlay, but you're probably not going to have to buy another light for perhaps even a decade, which is quite a long time for a light to last.
Yeah.
So the Exposure Strada MK10 SB got 4.5 stars for its excellent build quality. It's really bright light. The downside is the extremely high price, but if you're willing to pay that, it is a genuinely really good light.
And if you're not willing to pay that, the Lezyne Macro Drive 1300 XXL is a really solid option. I was really impressed with the performance. I felt it was really robust. The battery life was very good. It doesn't quite have the quality add-ons as the Exposure, but it is also a third of the price. So there you go, that is our 4UP lights group test. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you use one of these lights, let us know in the comments, or if you use another that you really recommend or want to warn people against, also comment in the box below. Please do hit the like button and subscribe to see more of our content.